Next guest is an activist for the rights of the LGBTQ community and for the rights of every human. She is a humanitarian and a gender fluid model. Please welcome to the show, Elliott Sailors.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me, Elliott.
Oh, thank you. I'm really honored and excited to be here.
Thank you. So I always begin the conversation with the question, what do you believe?
So I knew that beforehand, but it's just like not the easiest question to come up with a really simple answer. But one thing that I know that I believe is in being true to yourself, in showing up as who you know yourself to be. And as someone who works with the LGBTQ plus community, I do want to acknowledge that it's not always safe for people to express their gender or their sexuality. And so when I talk about the importance of being true to ourselves, I also really invite everybody to consider that who you are it's not just your gender or your sexuality, right? Like if you were listing the things that you were looking for in a mate or even a friend, you probably wouldn't list their sexuality. Like it's not a thing that you would, that you would even think of as a descriptor, right? There's a ton of other things that we value so much. And we forget that that's part of who we are too, right? And so we get to show up in all of those other ways. And too often when a part of us is silenced or unrecognized, we shut down completely and we don't acknowledge all of the other parts of who we are. So I believe in really looking at ourselves in a holistic way and being really true to the big picture and showing up for other people as how we want people to show up for us.
Absolutely. Sure. So when did you sort of recognize that in yourself?
Well, it's an ongoing process. It's because we're not always the same, right? I mean, we're not the same as we were a year ago or, even a few days ago or who we were before the coronavirus. Back in the days when we got to go outside. I mean, I know seriously, like the amount of joy that I find in the smallest things now is amazing. Yeah. There's a lot that I took for granted before. But I was really lucky to be raised by a family who really has this focus on who we are and how we show up in the world. And as the oldest of 6 kids, there was also a lot of pressure put on me to be the example all the time. So it's almost an unlearning process for me to stop always thinking of myself as having to set a good example. It's important, right? It's not like we shouldn't set a good example, but I kind of took like the weight of the world on my shoulders. Like anyone who would ever see me do something that wasn't perfect, if they did something imperfect, it was my fault because they saw me do it first. So yeah, for me, it was really just getting more in tune with all the parts of me that I did like, and being able to enjoy those parts of me and not just because they were setting a good example for somebody else.
It's like being free.
Yeah. My dad now calls himself a recovering intellectual.
Wow.
He's recognized a lot of the pressure he put on us as kids, constantly analyzing everything. And, a lot of what he felt was, being the best possible parent. Now he's like, that probably wasn't ideal. So we still have, an awesome relationship. And again, it's all inside of that, being true to ourselves and being honest about who we are and where we're at. And so my father and I are still able to have that relationship, thank goodness.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. That you said so many things that I'm thinking about as we're chatting about, being honest with yourself and who you are. I mean, I think you're right. It is an ongoing exploration of oneself. And you're right. You kind of learn about yourself when you're in situations that are incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
And right now, this is incredibly challenging, but we're all experiencing it at the same rate. And I'm just wondering, when you say, that you appreciate the little things, what are those little things?
Well, yesterday, I don't know if you know, but New York City had a sing-along of the song New York, New York.
I saw your,
So, yeah, so every night at 7, there's the clap because we care, right? So everybody goes out at 7 and claps. And then the sing-along started at 7:02. So we went on our roof and, yeah, had a blast.
and that's a little thing. That's just getting together on a roof
Yeah.
and singing. It's just
So much joy. It was unbelievable. And there was a guy across the way and he was playing his horn. And when we all, finished, we're waving at each other and have a good one and take care and, yelling out these things across. And the last thing he says is, wash your hands.
Wow, I love it. But it's human
know?
spirit, right? It's like showing it's human spirit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That
It
resilience.
was literally just like looking out. It's like, hey, we know you're touching the doorknob of your roof. Make sure you remember when you get back inside.
I love it. Wash your hands. Don't touch your
Looking out for each other. Looking out for each other.
That's great. I love that. Yeah. It's so true. Looking out for each other. Speaking of looking out for each other, right now, this conversation that we're having is especially important right now during COVID-19 because this virus is presenting a unique threat to the LGBTQ community, humanity, and women. Can you speak to what's happening right now about all these issues that we're facing?
There are a lot of LGBTQ youth who either haven't even come out to their families yet, or who have and it wasn't received well, or it's still just kind of iffy or up in the air, right? And teenagers in general don't exactly necessarily love being around their families all the time. So a lot of these people are dealing with this feeling of almost being like put back in the closet. That by having to stay inside and being kept from the community, they're not able to live their truth. And some of these youth are even in dangerous situations. And some of these youth are kicked out of their homes and they become homeless even before this, right? I mean, that's something that happens. And thankfully, there are organizations like the Hedrick Martin Institute that specifically help these youth. And so a lot of what they're doing at this time is making sure that these youth are still fed. The way that they're providing, they're distributing the food is changing ongoingly because of the coronavirus and how they can do that. So you'll have to go to their website. It's hmi.org to know exactly how that's working at this time. And some of the other services that they provide are medical services for these youth. So you can do phone or video conversations in order to get prescription refills for trans youth and gender nonconforming youth to be able to get their hormones, as well as other medical needs that they're dealing with. They're also supplying tablets to these youth who don't have the ability to get online because they don't have anything to get online to get in touch with anybody. So, any donations that you can give, again, hmi.org/donate. They're not taking individual devices at this time to be able to donate individual devices. But if there's anybody who has like devices in bulk, you can contact them. And then obviously monetary donations. I have a little list here of all the things that they're working on. Oh, they have virtual paid internships. They have tutoring for students. So there's a number of things. And then I don't know if you're familiar with the Trevor Project.
I am, yes. Could you
Yeah.
tell everyone a bit about it in case they're not?
Yes, yeah. So the Trevor Project exists to support LGBTQ youth in preventing suicide. So any time that you are considering killing yourself, or you have a friend or family member who is, you can call their hotline 24/7 anytime. And that number is 1-866-488-7386. You can also text, because a lot of youth don't necessarily want to talk on the phone. So you can also text. And then if you go to their website, trevorproject.org, then you can also chat in case you want to do it that way. Their entire system is moved remote at this time, and they've actually been receiving twice as many people reaching out. So again, anything that you can do to donate to them to help them in taking care of these youth is definitely greatly appreciated.
That's incredible. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're gonna definitely put more of that on our posts, and you know, all of the information so that people can access that. And thank you.
You also mentioned women and what women are dealing with. And one of the things that people are not realizing right now, like we hear about these toilet paper shortages, right? Tampon shortages.
Wow.
There are people who are bartering for tampons. They're literally coming on, hey, I'll make you, this many cinnamon rolls if you can send me a box of tampons. These things are really happening because a lot of people with means are going in and they're stocking up on tampons. The fact of the matter is, like, we're still only having our periods once a month.
Yeah.
And most people are leaving their homes at least once a month, if not twice. So you don't need to stock up on that, because people who are really living paycheck to paycheck, who don't have the money to stock up, by the time they get there, there's nothing left. And organizations who usually help with this are also dealing with the shortage of tampons. It's not good right now. People are really struggling, and people are forgetting that when they stock up like that, it's, you're actually not helping even yourself out, right? Because you're going to go out again. You don't need all those. So there's a couple solutions. And one is, if you do have the means, to do monthly subscriptions, because those companies do have, and they do cost a little bit more. But if you think about ones like Cora, for example, they actually use a portion of the money that you spend on their products to have period education, right? So that people can understand the different youth, right, when they're first getting their periods. And then also other things like cups, for example. Like, a lot of people don't know about cups or how they work or what those are. I mean, literally, like, my girlfriend just learned what cups were like 2 months ago, 3 months ago.
You explain?
Yeah. So menstrual cups are like a little rubbery silicone cup that you insert like you would a tampon. However, they hold more hours of blood, of menstruatingness. And then you take it out and you wash it and you can reuse it. Different brands have different lifespans on their cups. They're not, you're not going to have one for life, but they will last you a number of months. And oftentimes it's significantly cheaper than tampons, and it's definitely better for the environment. So it will cost more when you first buy the cup, but then the money that you're saving in tampons adds up.
Right.
And then there's also period underwear like Thinx or Ruby, which, like, I use. Before I used to use as a backup for tampons. Now I use as a backup for cups. And And then on your lighter days, you can even just do that. And now that we're all at home, just, maybe you can just handle it. I don't know. It works for you. But just be really responsible about how many, pads or tampons or whatever you're taking, and not taking more than you need.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. I really had no idea there was a shortage until you mentioned it.
Also, side note, I just realized I said regarding women, and I want to point out that as someone who identifies as gender fluid, but also works a lot with the non-binary community. I actually try to refrain from saying women. I say people who menstruate, because a lot of trans guys in the process of their transition, right, they're still menstruating for a certain period of time, and also non-binary individuals, and so people who menstruate.
But let's get into that a little bit, because could you speak to, I have so many questions. Firstly, like, what does gender fluidity mean to you for the first?
The reason that I identify as gender fluid is, always growing up, I was always like, when I would talk about females, I would talk about them as like they are like that, not like we are like that, right? And I also talked about boys like they're like that. So I didn't experience myself as either male or female, but I didn't have the words for it like that. I was just kind of like, oh, like I'm not a girly girl, but and I feel more comfortable with the dudes, but I'm not a tomboy because I don't really play sports. And it was like this long explanation of how I saw myself.
Right.
So for me, once I learned the word gender fluid, I was like, that's it, easy. There's one word. Done. And in my case, the biggest struggle was just kind of like the fact that it was a long explanation. Like I was really privileged in the sense that I was safe in my family and in my community, and I didn't have to look for a place to feel at home. And now a lot of these words like gender fluid or gender queer or non-binary, some people get worried. There's like so many words. Why does there have to be so many words? What's the deal with this? And the fact of the matter is the giving things language, giving things a name allows you to feel known, but also then you realize there are other people who use this word, and then suddenly you have a community. Right. And you can search out other people who also use this language, and you get to feel understood and to be a part of something.
Amazing. Yeah.
And I think that it's very important that we make a point of using our words for ourselves and not putting them on other people. So I know that something that comes up a lot in the trans community is there are a number of people in the trans community who are binary, meaning that the gender they were assigned at birth is the opposite of how they identify, right? So male to female or female to male. But there are also a number of trans people who are non-binary. They, may want to have top surgery, but they don't want bottom surgery. They don't identify as either male or female, or they identify as both. So it's one of those things where we can't put on other people who they are. We have no idea. So yes, there's a lot of language, but we also can't be telling people the right way to do all of these things. It's really up to us to just ask people how they identify and what language they prefer for themselves.
It's really, really interesting. Thank you for breaking that down. I'm curious, like, what if you could speak to any of the misconceptions that the LGBTQ community, what are the misconceptions, and what are the challenges? That's faced right now. Especially with the current administration and with television and
a lot of, television's doing a lot better. That's for sure. And it's good too that we're seeing people of color in a lot of these roles too. And I feel like one of the primary misconceptions is actually what I was just talking about, right? Is understanding that there are both binary and non-binary trans people, and that some non-binary people don't identify as trans, right? So there's a lot of understanding that goes into all of this. And there are people who feel like, it's not my job to educate you on this. Like, you should go educate yourself somewhere else. But for the most part, people are super ready to answer your questions in helping you understand who they are. One of the really important things that I think some people still get confused about is that, which is a trans male and which is a trans female. Like, which way do I say it? And you say what they identify as, right? So it's not the gender that they were assigned at birth, it's the gender they say they are. So a trans male is someone who identifies as male. Okay. A trans female is someone who identifies as female.
Female.
And that means that a trans female is she and a trans male is he. And then there are trans people who identify as they, them, and there are non-binary people who identify as they, them. And there are also a number of other pronouns that people use too, which I'm not going to go into just because I feel like it starts to confuse people. I do recommend that, you search that and you do use them when people ask you to use them.
Sure.
But yeah, I feel like a lot of the confusion more happens around gender than around sexuality. But sexuality is fluid too. It's not, it's also not fixed. I mean, I experienced that in my own life. I was married to a male and was super happy. I had dated a lot of men and was very happy sexually with them. And at a certain point, my body just stopped being happy sexually with men. And it was really confusing. I was like, am I going through early menopause? Like, what's happening?
Wow.
And it was confusing because I still love my husband, but I just wasn't attracted to him anymore. And for me, it was kind of a relief in a sense. And I think for him too, to learn that sexuality can be fluid as well. And that it wasn't, nobody was doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
It's just
right. It's just
possible for our bodies to change over time in that way.
Yeah. Wow. So how long ago were you married? How long ago was that?
So we got married in 2011, like 10, 11, I think it was.
Wait, what day is it? I don't even know.
And I think the divorce was finalized in 2016. I mean, we had like the most amicable divorce ever. It was difficult in that we do still love and care about each other, and that we didn't want to do anything that would be hurtful to the other person. Yeah. And we wanted to respect the other person fully in every way. And at the same time, it's mourning a relationship. And so figuring out how to set boundaries and how much time to spend together and not to. And
right.
And in my case, I had already begun my relationship with my now fiance.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. So also, their relationship, they have an amazing relationship. So I'm super crazy lucky in terms of how that all happened in my case.
Yeah. Amazing. So I'm just curious, in terms of all that you've been through, and you're so young. I mean, is there any advice that you would give your younger self?
To be more gentle with myself. Yeah. I always judge myself so harshly. I talked about it a little bit earlier, right? Like always feeling like I had to set the perfect example. But because I judged myself harshly, I think that I was judging others probably harshly as well. Even though I thought, since I was judging myself more harshly, that I was being kinder to others in hindsight,
Yeah.
there was too much judgment present. It's we have to make judgment calls, right? And we have to set boundaries, and we have to learn what's okay with us and what's not.
As long as it's not corrosive, like the judgment, right? That it's like not corroding your.
Yeah, and I think that is a lot of what happened in my case growing up. I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I think I'm still recovering from that a little bit.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I understand the pressure. I mean, I'm a Virgo. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves. Francesca can talk about that, but being an astrologer. But yeah, I definitely, yeah, it's right now I feel like there's pressure too. I mean, there's pressure to like create, and everyone's like, do this, write a book, da 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 da. And it's great to do these podcasts and have these conversations. But I find that kind of during this time, being my brain is like I have like half a brain, because it's like there's all the worry going on, and I'm trying to just exist, and it's like, well, I can't put all this pressure on myself, because I'm just trying to like exist and be okay in the confines of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. It is really hard at this time, I think, to find that balance between wanting to stay motivated and needing to stay motivated, but how much?
Exactly.
Right? How much is the appropriate amount? And it's definitely different for every single person. And it's also this weird thing where everybody is like, well, everyone's available at any given moment. So why can't you answer my calls all the time, or my emails, or whatever? And, and especially people like me who are out of work, even more people are like, well, you should just be available all the time. So being okay saying no, to whatever it is that's coming up at this time can seem even harder, but is still really important. And it's something else that actually is a scary thing that's happening at this time, is the huge rise in domestic violence.
Yeah.
For those who don't have the ability to make their own choices like we do.
Yeah.
And so there's this huge insurgence of these domestic violence cases, and then all of a sudden there's been kind of what looks like a drop. And the drop is not good news. The drop is that these people have nowhere to go, and so they're going to stop reporting it. They're going to stop saying anything because they can't look for a job somewhere else. There's no way that they have of supporting themselves. When the abuser is away at work, or would have been away at work, that's not their moment of escape, because the abuser's at home all the time. It's really terrifying. I mean, the UK has seen twice as many domestic killings, twice as many. And it's and it's also like, well, what on earth is there to do? Right. So I know that, I went and I sought out like what are the resources for these people who are dealing with these things. Because again, it is mostly women, but it's not just women.
No, it's kids. Well, kids in abusive homes.
And the elderly.
And the elderly.
A lot with the elderly right now too, and the handicapped. So I put down some hotlines and things to share.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So the national domestic hotline is 1-800-799-7233. The national sexual assault line is 1-800-656-HOPE, which is 4673. The native hotline for Native peoples is 844-762-8483. The trans lifeline is 877-565-8255. 8860, and the National Parent Helpline. So parents who have children who are violent towards one another, who are violent towards them, or maybe even are violent themselves and want to seek help stopping.
Yes.
855 for a parent.
Great.
And really, I want to encourage everybody to, reach out to your friends, listen for coded language. There's been a lot of coded language happening. And if you suspect anything, ask yes or no questions. Don't ask something where they might have to say something that will put them in a scary position in front of their abuser.
Can you get into the coded language a bit for us?
So I am not well versed in the coded language around domestic abuse. It's something that, as I was researching about it, I learned was happening a lot. It's happening in waves in France right now, actually. So I don't know what theirs is, but it probably wouldn't be applicable in English anyway. But I feel like sometimes we have kind of a pretty good idea when our friends or people that we know are in these kind of situations. And so if they're alluding to something and you're unsure about what it is that they perhaps are alluding to, that's when you want to stick to those yes or no questions.
Okay.
Are you saying that you're not safe? Would you like me to make a phone call for you?
Yeah.
So that you can be there for them. Also, a website that exists for people to go to is futureswithoutviolence.org.
Amazing.
And there are a lot of things on there. And that's also where you can donate. Really consider donating to domestic violence shelters. It's the things that those of us who are not in those positions, it's just not, it's not on our radar right now, and it needs to be, because it's getting so much worse. And I mean, I can't imagine being trapped with someone who treats me that way and having no idea how to escape. No idea.
It's frightening. I have a really dear friend who's a school teacher, and she said, the kids, a lot of the kids, I mean, school is their place of refuge.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have that now. And the same thing with an abuser going to work.
Yeah.
It's very, very scary. So thank you for sharing this information with us. It's vital. And let's find a way to get it out there even more. Then maybe we could put our heads together and come up with something to, these conversations are so important, and everything that you do as an activist is so important. So thank you. And if there's anything, of course, I want to get more involved. I know Francesca wants to get more involved. Let's put our heads together and.
Yes. Yeah. And also I want to acknowledge too, not everybody has the means to give, but everybody has the means to share, so even if you can't put the money together right now to help these organizations, you can help them by sharing this information.
Exactly.
And passing the word on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So true. Thank you. Thank you for everything, Elliott.
Thank you for the platform so that I can share.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Really. Thank you so much. And it was lovely to speak with you. Really lovely. Thank you.